Hello, welcome to Business Reporter's Future of Work campaign. I'm Ashley Blake. Recent years have been turbulent for London and the UK. Businesses face significant challenges with Brexit, supply chain challenges, the pandemic and lockdowns, and a slowing economy. How can London prioritise growth? How can the business community and the City of London cement their position as global leaders again? Tim Kresick, he's the CEO and founder of Vorboss and believes London needs a new internet service, a robust fibre network that offers not only 100 gigabit speed, but a purpose-built infrastructure for ambitious companies. But how? This is what we're going to find out. Tim, welcome to the Future of Work series. So the basic question, Tim, is how can connectivity help?
Right, so we're in an information age, and when we think about London in particular and all of our big cities and the heart of these economies, they're knowledge economies predominantly. And really there are two things that feed a knowledge economy, people's minds and connectivity, the ability to get the information and knowledge that people generate around the globe. So the more fundamental question here is about understanding the absolutely critical role that connectivity and our ability to transmit the information that we generate plays in building and powering this modern economy. We're talking about speed, which really in this context means capacity or bandwidth. It means sort of how much information can we transmit, but also we're talking about reliability. So we're talking about the ability to put two connections into a building so that there's redundancy. We're talking about connections that are utterly reliable, so that people aren't suddenly finding that on a Tuesday afternoon they have to go to a coffee shop in order to finish their work or to send an email, and so that these are things that can be depended on, and in doing so can allow businesses to really build on top of those solutions.
So do businesses really need 100 gigabits?
Well, absolutely, and we have that product in the market. We have customers ordering it, but I think more importantly, it's worth understanding. We don't always understand the need or the use case until we have the capability. And perhaps a great example is, you probably take for granted now that you can sit on a bus and you can watch streaming HD video on your mobile. You're not thinking about the cost of doing that at the time, But at the moment that you were sold unlimited mobile data, a few years ago, you weren't thinking, great, this means I'll be able to stream films on the bus. That was a behavior that evolved and developed once you got used to working in a world where you were now no longer ever thinking about the cost of doing something. That's amazing, but it's totally lacking in the enterprise. So in the enterprise, we are still in a place where, and in most offices, where we are operating under the known constraints of bandwidth, almost to the extent that we're totally taking for granted that we have those constraints, that IT managers are just openly dismissing technologies because clearly the network can't support it.
I see. So that kind of answers the question. Does London have the right infrastructure in place? You're saying at the moment it doesn't.
Well, at the moment we're in a really interesting situation. We're coming off the back of a 20 plus year regulatory environment in which you have a sort of single operator that has predominantly dominated the market. That, in our view, has stifled innovation. And now what we're seeing is a huge pressure to actually go and fibre all of the homes and towns and villages all around the country. We have a huge push from government to get that done. And it's important, right? Like we absolutely need to deliver connectivity to the entire population. But unfortunately, what that's doing is drawing focus away from business and from London. That's sort of seen as a solved problem. And going back to the earlier point around the sort of binary nature of, well, it's connected, but not really asking the question of, but is it connected correctly or well enough or with sufficient bandwidth or resilience or reliability? Those questions aren't being asked.
So tell us about Vorboss. What do they bring to the table?
We have built, frankly, an enormous network over the last 3 years in central London. We've deployed well over 500 kilometers of cable as of right now. We can service really any commercial building in Zone 1 and a huge amount of Zone 2, and we're continuing to grow that density. If you think about enterprise connectivity, it's about 70% of the entire UK market is within Zones 1 and 2 in London. Really, our initial ambition is service that market and service it extremely well, but inevitably what we then continue to do is to grow outward from there and sort of address more and more and smaller businesses as we go. And we're doing that with a view to being able to really give businesses a step change in the availability of bandwidth. What we're talking about is an order of magnitude. So we're delivering as standard and as our minimum more than 10 times the bandwidth that businesses on average have. So the majority of businesses in London, believe it or not, are connected with a 1 gigabit or less circuit today. Our entry-level minimum is 10 gigabit. We really would like to get to a point where you don't even have to ask the question. It's just a given that you have absolutely abundant bandwidth for anything you want to do at a sensible price and on sort of contractually very fair terms. And it should just be very straightforward and very simple.
Vorboss is keeping all of their operations and services in-house. Why should the customer care about that, Tim?
That's always been a bit of a theme for me and with this business is wanting to own as much of our supply chain as possible so that we have that quality and control and that ability to innovate. Because really only when you're vertically integrated can you actually innovate. Otherwise you're always constrained by what can the supplier give me, and that's always been the ambition for us. Telecoms has a terrible reputation, both domestically and commercially. It's probably one area where they're really similar, which is like everybody hates phoning up their mobile phone provider, their broadband provider. So that's something we're changing. And to do that, we need to be the people on the end of the phone. We need to be the people taking that first call and actually delivering the change that we want to see. Of course, by being directly in contact with our customers, it gives us all of the insight and feedback and everything else we need to really push forward and iterate and innovate and develop our service. And again, that's critical when you go back to this concept of constantly changing and being an evolving organization, is you have to be close to the customer to actually really be able to deliver that.
Okay, Tim, let's say you've won me over. I want to use Vorboss Internet Services, but traditionally it can take a long time for businesses to get connected. Can we expect the same from your company?
Absolutely not. So we think of what we do as coming in sort of two halves. That process of getting fibre delivered to your business and installed, and then the life cycle that happens afterwards of providing robust, reliable, fast connectivity on an ongoing basis with great support, easy billing, all the rest of it. We've done a huge amount of work to really rethink that installation process and to try and frame it around the customer and to try and understand what we can do to more frequently meet those demands of the customer and to make the process way less painful. And it is complicated. Getting cables into large buildings and meeting all of the regulatory requirements of doing that. And as I said, for things like fire safety, working with building management, landlords, wayleaves, it's a complicated process. But it's one that no one's really felt the need to innovate.
What would you say the next 5 to 10 years looks like as far as your company's concerned?
It's the paradox of getting to a world where people almost stop talking about it. I would like to get us to a place where bandwidth and connectivity, certainly for the businesses we serve, is something they don't think about. It's super reliable. It's totally abundant, and it enables them to just dream much bigger with their digital solutions. And that all sounds really dull, but what it actually does is fundamentally drives forward and unlocks the capacity of our thriving knowledge economy. And for me, that's just super exciting. Ultimately, we get to a place where no one really notices us, no one really sees us, but what we're actually doing and what we know we're doing is powering billions and billions of pounds worth of economic activity.
Tim Kresick, CEO and founder of Vorboss.